Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that someone has been watching you while you sleep. Not just once, not by accident, but every single night, standing there, silent. Close enough that if you opened your eyes at the wrong moment, you would see them. And the worst part is, you wouldn't even know how long it had been happening. That's not a scene from a movie. That's not a creepy story someone made up online. That's real. And tonight, you're going to hear 3 true stories that prove real life doesn't need monsters to be terrifying. It just needs the wrong person in the wrong place at the wrong time. The first story begins in a quiet neighborhood where nothing ever really happened. The kind of place where people left their doors unlocked and waved at each other every morning. A woman named Rachel lived there alone in a small house she had inherited from her grandmother. It wasn't a big place, just 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, and a living room that always smelled faintly of old books and dust. Rachel worked long hours and usually came home late, exhausted and ready to sleep. Her routine was always the same: lock the door, check the windows, make some tea, and go to bed with the TV on low volume. For the first few months, everything felt normal, safe. Then small things started to feel off. At first it was just objects being moved, a chair that wasn't where she left it, a cabinet door slightly open when she was sure she had closed it. She blamed herself. She was tired, overworked, probably just forgetful. But then one night she came home and noticed muddy footprints near the back door, not leading out, leading in. Her heart started pounding, but she told herself someone must have tracked them in earlier, maybe even her, even though she knew she hadn't been anywhere near mud that day. A few days later, she noticed something else. Food was going missing, just a little at a time: a slice of bread, some leftovers, a few pieces of fruit. At first, she thought she was imagining it, but she started paying attention. She even marked the level of milk in the carton with a pen. The next morning, the line was lower, and she hadn't touched it. That's when fear started to creep in, the quiet kind, the kind that sits in your stomach and doesn't go away. She started checking her doors and windows more carefully. She even bought a cheap camera and set it up in the living room, pointing toward the kitchen and hallway. The first night, nothing happened. The second night, nothing happened. The third night, she woke up to a notification on her phone. There was movement in her house. Her hands were shaking as she opened the app. The footage was grainy, but clear enough. At around 2:17 in the morning, her bedroom door slowly opened, and a man stepped out. He was thin, dirty. His clothes looked old and worn. He stood there for a moment, just staring down the hallway. Then he walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge, took food, and then, before going back into the bedroom, he stopped, turned, and looked straight at the camera. Rachel didn't sleep at all after that. She called the police immediately. They searched the house and found something horrifying. In the attic, hidden behind old boxes and insulation, was a small makeshift sleeping area: blankets, food wrappers, bottles of water. Someone had been living there for weeks, maybe months. And every night while Rachel slept, he came down, walked around her house, used her kitchen, and then went back up into the ceiling. The man was eventually caught. He had broken in through a loose vent on the roof. He admitted he watched her sleep sometimes, just stood in her doorway and watched. Rachel moved out of that house within a week. To this day, she says she still can't sleep in complete darkness, because every time she closes her eyes, she remembers that there was once someone standing in her room, breathing quietly, while she had no idea at all. But as terrifying as that is, the next story shows that sometimes the scariest place isn't your home. Sometimes it's the place you go to relax. A group of friends decided to take a road trip to a remote forest cabin they found online. It was cheap, isolated, surrounded by trees, no neighbors for miles. They thought it would be perfect. No noise, no distractions. Just a weekend of drinking, hiking, and getting away from everything. The drive took hours. The road got narrower and darker the deeper they went. By the time they arrived, the sun was already starting to set. The cabin looked old but solid. Wooden walls, a small porch, one door, a few windows. Inside, it was simple. 2 bedrooms, a living area, a kitchen that looked like it hadn't been updated in decades. They laughed about how creepy it felt and joked about horror movies as they unpacked. That first night was normal. They drank, they talked, they played music, and eventually, one by one, they went to sleep. Sometime in the middle of the night, one of them woke up to a strange sound. It was soft, rhythmic, like footsteps outside, slow ones. He lay there, listening. The sound stopped. He told himself it was probably an animal, a deer, a raccoon, something like that. He rolled over and tried to sleep. In the morning, they noticed something strange. There were footprints around the cabin, human footprints, not theirs. They joked about it at first. Maybe a hiker passed by. Maybe the owner came to check on the place. But deep down, the feeling was different, uncomfortable. Still, they decided to stay. After all, they were there to relax, right? That night, it happened again. Footsteps. This time, more than one person heard them. Someone even looked out the window. They didn't see anything, just trees, darkness, and silence. They locked the door and tried to ignore it. The third night, one of them woke up because he felt cold. Too cold. He realized the front door was open, wide open. The air inside was freezing. They all woke up, panicking. They searched the cabin. Nothing was taken. Nothing was moved. But the door had definitely been opened, and none of them had done it. That's when they decided to leave early. As they packed, one of them noticed something carved into the wood near the back of the cabin. It was faint, easy to miss, but once they saw it, they couldn't unsee it. It was a message, scratched deep into the wall. "We watch you sleep." They didn't finish packing. They grabbed what they could and left. When they got back to the city, they reported it. The owner later told them something that made it even worse. The cabin had been broken into before, more than once. And people in the area had reported seeing figures watching from the trees at night, just standing there, silent, still. To this day, none of them know who opened that door, or who left that message, or how long someone had been watching them from the forest, waiting for the right moment. And if you think those 2 stories are bad, the last one in this video is even more disturbing. Because this time, a danger wasn't a stranger hiding in a house, and it wasn't someone watching from the trees. This time, it was something they couldn't see at all. But before we get to that, if you were enjoying these true stories and you want more real-life horror that proves the world is far scarier than fiction, make sure you subscribe to Mystery Spectrum US, because stories like this are just getting started. The final story begins in a place that was supposed to be safe, a normal place, a place people trusted. And what happened there changed several lives forever. And the worst part is, it all happened so slowly that by the time they realized what was wrong, it was already too late. The final story begins in a place that most people would never expect danger to come from. A normal building, a normal routine, a normal life. The kind of place where nothing exciting ever happens, and because of that, nobody ever thinks twice about it. That's exactly why what happened next was so terrifying. In 2015, a man named Victor started a new job at a small printing warehouse on the outskirts of a city. The building was old, but it was still in use. Big concrete walls, high ceilings, long rows of machines that ran almost all day. The work wasn't glamorous, but it paid well, and Victor needed the money. His shifts were long, sometimes 12 hours, and most of that time was spent inside the same few rooms, surrounded by the same noises, the same smells, the same people. At first, everything was fine. The job was boring, but predictable. Then, after a few weeks, people started feeling strange. One worker complained about headaches that wouldn't go away. Another said he felt dizzy all the time. Someone else said they were having trouble concentrating. like their brain just wouldn't stay focused. They all joked about it. Too much work, too little sleep, bad coffee. No one took it seriously. Victor started noticing changes in himself, too. He would forget simple things. He would lose track of time. Sometimes he would be in the middle of doing something and suddenly have no memory of how he got there. Once he drove home and didn't remember the drive at all. It felt like his mind was skipping pieces of reality. Then the mood changes started. People began snapping at each other over nothing. Arguments broke out. Small mistakes turned into shouting matches. One worker quit after screaming at his supervisor and storming out, something no one had ever seen him do before. Another started crying at work for no clear reason. It was like the building itself was slowly changing the people inside it. The first serious incident happened when one of the older workers collapsed near one of the machines. He didn't trip, he didn't slip, he just fell. When the ambulance came, the paramedics thought he might be having a stroke. At the hospital, the tests came back strange. His blood showed signs of chemical exposure, long-term exposure, but no one could explain how. The warehouse didn't use anything dangerous, at least not that anyone knew of. Management said it was probably unrelated. They told everyone to get back to work. Over the next few months, things got worse. More people started getting sick. More people started acting strangely. Victor began having vivid nightmares. He would wake up drenched in sweat, heart racing, convinced he had heard someone calling his name. At work, he sometimes saw things that weren't there. Shadows moving in the corner of his vision, shapes that disappeared when he looked directly at them. He told himself it was stress. He needed the job. He couldn't afford to quit. Then one night, during a late shift, something happened that changed everything. Victor and two co-workers were in a storage area, moving boxes, when one of them suddenly stopped and stared at the wall. He said he could hear something, a humming sound, a low, constant vibration. They listened. At first, they didn't hear anything. Then Victor noticed it too, a faint noise, almost like electricity, almost like something buzzing behind the walls. They called maintenance. The maintenance worker checked the area and found something hidden behind a panel that had been sealed for years. Old equipment, old containers, and warning labels that had faded so much they were barely readable anymore. The building, it turned out, had once been used decades ago to store hazardous industrial chemicals. When it was converted into a warehouse, most of it had been cleaned up, but not all of it. Some of it had been left behind, hidden, forgotten, small leaks, tiny amounts, over years, enough to slowly poison the air. The building was evacuated, tests were done. The results were bad, very bad. The air inside had been contaminated for a long time. Everyone who worked there had been breathing it in day after day, month after month, some for years. Victor and several others were diagnosed with long-term neurological damage, memory problems, mood disorders, chronic headaches. Some of them would never fully recover. One worker developed severe anxiety and couldn't go back to any job that involved being indoors. Another struggled with depression so deep he needed constant treatment. Their lives had been changed by something they never saw, never smelled, never even suspected. And the worst part is, for a long time, they had blamed themselves. They thought they were just tired, just stressed, just weak. They never imagined the building itself was hurting them. When you put all three of these stories together, a pattern starts to form. In the first, someone thought their home was safe. In the second, a group of friends thought their getaway was harmless. In the third, people trusted their workplace. In every case, the danger wasn't obvious. It wasn't loud. It didn't announce itself. It just waited, quietly, patiently, letting people get comfortable before it started doing real damage. That's what makes these stories so disturbing. Not just what happened, but how normal everything seemed before it did. Most horror movies show you the threat right away. A monster, a killer, something you can point to and say, that's the problem. But real life doesn't work like that. Real life is quieter, slower. The danger blends in. It hides in familiar places. It waits until you stop paying attention. If you think about it, that's what makes it truly scary. Not the idea of something chasing you in the dark, but the idea that you could already be standing in the wrong place, breathing the wrong air, trusting the wrong space, and have no idea at all. And that's why these stories stay with people, because they don't end neatly. Rachel will always remember that someone once stood in her room and watched her sleep. Those friends will always remember the feeling of being watched from the trees. Victor and his co-workers will always live with the damage done by a building they thought was just another building. If you're listening to this right now, in your room, in your car, at work, take a second and look around you. Think about how much of your life is built on trust. Trust that your home is safe. Trust that your workplace isn't hurting you. Trust that the places you go every day aren't slowly working against you. Most of the time, that trust is fine. Most of the time, nothing bad happens. But sometimes, in rare and terrifying cases, that trust is exactly what puts people in danger. If you've made it this far and these stories made you uncomfortable, or made you think, or made you look at the world a little differently, then make sure you subscribe to Mystery Spectrum US for more true stories that prove real life can be far more disturbing than anything fiction could ever create. And before you go, remember this. The scariest horror stories aren't about monsters. They're about normal places, normal choices, and the moment you realize that something you trusted was never safe at all. Because sometimes the real nightmare isn't hiding in the dark. Sometimes you're already living inside it